Welcome to the Alberta Prosperity Project Podcast. If you're ready to listen, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Thursday, June 16th, 2022. Welcome to episode 6 of the Alberta Prosperity Project Podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Naday, joined today on video with Tanner up in Lloyd. Tanner, how's it going?
Oh, it's rainy and it's cold, which is fine. I don't mind it. But we have a resident, infamous celebrity in our house now, or in mom and dad's house, as you know, named
Mr. Orange.
Mr. Orange. And so Mr. Orange, the cat, is not so excited about the change in weather. But what are you going to do? What it is Mr. Orange is a stray, or was a stray, that we believe was just kind of dumped onto mom and dad's yard a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it was during November, so it was chilly. It was cold outside. It was tame. It clearly wasn't wild. Brought it inside, named it Mr. Orange, not knowing if it was a male or female. And just because we liked the name, we thought it was hilarious. It's actually a calico Manx cat, so there's hardly any orange on it at all. But anyways, brought it inside, and now Mr. Orange is just part of the household. We took a photo last week of me and Mr. Orange in my parents' garden, and the reception to Mr. Orange was fantastic. People love Mr. Orange, and Mr. Orange loves the people. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been great. But maybe you have an update on your battle with the city and the smoker.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mr. Orange, obviously a very, very happy thing that had happened for the APP recently. Might have to make him the mascot. I'm not too sure. We'll see.
I don't mind.
I don't mind. I mean, that might go. I'll put the picture up on the screen as well. But in terms of the barbecue, the city councilors never did get back to me yet. So still awaiting a response. If any of them are listening to the podcast, feel free to reach back out. Let me know if I'm able to still be using my smoker. I hope so. But if not, I still thought of the idea just the other day of I'm going to take the smoker off my patio or balcony, and I'll take it downstairs into the parking lot and just plug it in where the vehicles get plugged in the wintertime. And that way I'm not on a balcony, and I'm just in a public space. It's my parking stall, so I don't think that they can get mad at me. So we'll have some hot dogs, some burgers. Anyone can come out. We'll see if they evict me for that one, but I don't think so. I think it's a brilliant idea. What do you think?
Oh, it's brilliant. And I guess you're not going to have a tailgate party for the Oilers, but
no,
brilliant.
No.
I know that was cold, but that's whatever. What are you going to do? Stone cold. That'd be unreal. That'd be unreal.
So just a temporary solution. Obviously, I know that the last podcast I had mentioned maybe looking at some places and did drive by a couple. There's some very nice houses, but the not so nice part is what it would do to the pocketbook. I mean, those prices right now are just... I know. I said I should have gone just to a Battle of Alberta game. I could have paid for a bunch of tickets instead of just the house if I wanted to.
Seriously. Well, you could have bought 3 tickets or buy a house. Your choice.
That's right. I know. So I could have taken 2 friends to the game. So I don't know. Exactly. It's crazy, but I mean, everyone listening, I'm sure, knows that across North America now we've seen this absolute record prices in homes. I'll post a graph here as well and show people just how high it's been going for several years now. It's just been constantly being inflated, similar to a bubble, right? And so I guess just a question for you as an economist, do you see our housing market in a bubble right now, or is that kind of an exaggeration?
Oh no, we're in a bubble. Yeah, we're in a bubble, and
simple.
You don't need to. You don't need to be an economist or a banker to know that. You just look at the prices, look at the history, look at the data, look at reality, and you'll see that we are in a massive, massive bubble.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess maybe just to help explain this bubble, because I think it is sometimes a complex subject to understand, I guess maybe if you could just touch a little bit on actually what got us into this bubble in the first place.
Right. So, well, as you know, that can often be a very dry and very boring and very monotonous explanation, especially when we talk about interest rates and all of those things. So maybe we'll try and make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more exciting and fun using one of my favorite foods, which is chocolate cake. I love chocolate cake, as you know. I know you're not as much of a cake consumer as I am.
Yeah.
But we'll dismiss that fact. That's
right.
What are you going to do?
We'll go with it. We'll go with it still.
What are you going to do? But anyways, okay. So I love chocolate cake, and you have espresso buttercream and maybe a dark chocolate ganache or a milk chocolate ganache and maybe some vanilla buttercream, and fantastic. Just love it. So let's suppose that you and I head to a banquet. Let's say it's a very fancy banquet, and we're in black ties, black suits, sharp shoes kind of thing. The women are all wearing lovely gowns, and it's a really, really nice banquet downtown somewhere in some massive city. And the halls are decorated. It's like a black, white, and brown ambiance and decoration. Really stunning, gorgeous.
Sure.
Have a lovely meal. And then at the end of the night, they announce that there's going to be cake. What it is there is a host, there's a bakery that's providing the cakes, and then there are, of course, the audience, you and I and the other 198 guests or individuals present at this banquet.
Sure.
So the host steps up to his podium and he announces that the dessert, for the evening has arrived, and there's espresso and there's coffee and, maybe a cognac or something. I don't know. Yeah. And they say, it's time to serve the dessert. And this host he says, well, believe it or not, this is a remarkable cake. It's an extraordinary cake, actually, insofar as this cake, a whole 8-inch, maybe 6-inch high chocolate, like triple chocolate with white chocolate and buttercream, et cetera, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
The whole cake compounds to only 5 or 10 calories.
Oh,
I know.
I'll start being a cake person now.
I know. Hardly anything at all. Like just unbelievable. So you can either get a full cake,
right,
or you can get a slice of cake. Your choice, right? You can either get a full 8-inch round that's tall kind of thing, the whole shooting works.
Yeah.
Or you can just get a slice. And it'd be a nice slice too, but it's up to you. That's the idea.
Okay.
Of course, after the host announces that this cake is almost magical, it's so remarkable, right? After this host announces that there's only 5 to 10 calories in the full cake, well, what do you suppose the demand for cake, the full cake, actually is?
Skyrocketing, just like our home prices.
Why? Exactly. Yeah. It's exactly right. It's like, why not? It's like, why not buy a full cake when I can consume the whole thing?
Right.
And it doesn't matter. Right.
Right.
Why not get the whole thing, bring it back to my table, and enjoy. That's the idea.
Right.
And so people are lining up, like they're running up. Hey, you know how people are during like Black Friday and stuff,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Same thing. Like all of these like supposedly highfalutin society guests are like, punching each other and throwing each other back and so on. It's just an absolute rampage.
Sure.
To get to the front where the bakery is serving these cakes and to pick up some. So of course everyone gets a full cake. They're cruising and they're just 1, 2, 3, left, right, and center. As fast as the bakery can put them on the table, people are taking them. Yeah. So of course the head baker goes to the host and says, we've got a problem here, right? We don't have enough cakes to meet the demand of the audience. There are way more people clamoring for cake than what we expected. Right. And so the baker goes to the host and says, listen, not only so, but you've told a lie. You haven't been telling the truth. And he whispers something to him. And so the host goes back up to his podium after hearing this new information. And he says, I have an announcement to make. He says, I have recently learned that actually the amount of calories in the cake is not 5 or 10. The amount of calories in the cake is closer to 500 to 800, somewhere in that range. And even that's low, but still it's a lot higher.
Yeah, sure.
And so people are like, oh no, right? Yeah. They gasp in their seats. You could even make it 5 to 8,000 calories. That's probably more realistic. But anyways, people gasp and they go, oh my, because they've been deceived, right?
Yes.
They've been tricked into consuming these full cakes or buying these or getting obtaining these full cakes with false information. Right. And so after the host announces that the calories in the cake are actually inflated to a substantial degree versus what we've been told.
Right.
Well, then who's going to consume that full cake or who's going to go for it?
Totally. Not many.
Right. Nowhere near as many people. Now we're thinking twice. Now we're going, I can either have a cake that, let's say, has somewhere between 5 to 8,000 calories, which I don't want, or I can have a slice that has 250 calories and be much more conservative and economical with my consumption of this dessert.
Right.
Well, of course, the market for slices will increase.
Right.
The market for full cakes will decrease.
Right.
And then an equilibrium will be reached, but not until, and this is the critical part, not until those who have consumed the full cake will see the effects of that go to their thighs or to their hips.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well,
so that's the issue. What we're talking about then with this example is interest rates, right? And the market for interest rates. It works like this. There are some individuals in society who have what's called a high time preference.
Sure.
And there are some individuals in society who have what's called a low time preference. And the two are obviously different.
Right.
Those with a high time preference want to buy things right now. They want to use their money and employ their money like right now to get the things that they want. So that new iPhone that costs whatever, $1,500, whatever it might be. I want to use my money to buy that right now. I don't want it in a month. I don't want it in a year. I want it today. Okay.
Right.
That's a high time preference. There's also a low time preference, which is I can wait, 6 months, a year, 5 years, etc., to spend my money, and that's okay. I don't mind. I don't mind sitting on it and holding on it or holding it for a little while. That's not an issue for me. And so I have two distinct types of spenders or consumers in society. Now, when a society is dominated by a high time preference, when people want to spend their money right now, and the majority of people want to spend their money right now, well, then the interest rates naturally will have to rise.
Right.
The reason for this is because some people want to borrow money, but in order to borrow money from someone else, you have to give that person a lot in return, right? Because they too want to spend that money right now. Right. So unless you can promise them a nice, fat return on their investment, on their lending, they're not going to lend. Right. And so, of course, the way you do that is by raising interest rates. If I lend out $100 and the interest rate tells me that in 1 year I'm going to receive a 10,000% rate of interest, well, I'll do it. I'll do it in a heartbeat. Like, that's a wicked, unbelievable deal. Right. But what if the time preference is low in the society? Well, then the interest rate will also be low because you don't really have to entice people to give away their money or to lend it out. They're happy to do it almost for nothing or for a lot less than what the high time preference spender or consumer wants to lend it out for. So in that regard, the interest rates are low because it doesn't cost a lot, or the lender doesn't need a lot in order to actually lend out his funds. Okay. Now, what have we seen with government over the last how many years? What have they done to interest rates?
Right. They've kept them low. And I think that everyone who knows or had watched the news previously, our federal government and Bank of Canada said due to, COVID and everything that was going on, they didn't want this bubble to burst. And they wanted to keep the prime rate low, to keep the borrowing costs low for consumers like us buying that cake, if you want to call it that. Right.
Exactly. So what the government did was they artificially submerged the interest rates to something as low as it was almost allowed, like as low as it could go. What did they do then? By doing so, they artificially telegraphed to the society of Canada, to the people of Canada, that the time preference for the individual was also low. That means it costs him almost nothing to spend right now. Like people, in a low time preference community, people are happy to spend over a period of years, like a long time, decades even, which means what would that be a great example of? Well, buying a house, right? That mortgage is paid off over a period of 2 or 3 decades, right? Whatever is 2 or 3 decades, a long time.
Yeah.
And so what the government did is they said, look, the interest rates are low. The calories of consuming cake are low. It costs you nothing to do it right now. We're going to spread out your purchase over 10, 20, 30 years.
Right.
And so why not? If there's, why not purchase a house? If there's no cost really to doing so at present, why not go ahead and purchase a home? And that's what people did. What the government did then is they turned would-be renters into homeowners. So they turned people who would normally consume a slice of cake into people consuming a full cake. Right. And there's a huge difference. And now that rates are increasing, now that interest rates are increasing, right, as we're all seeing, because reality has to slap back in your face at some point, right? Now those mortgage owners, those people who would otherwise be renters, are starting to feel the effects as their variable rates increase. And it's the cake has gone to the hips kind of thing. And now the effects of reality are coming into, coming into view. Yeah, we can see what's happening.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's one of I would argue, and I'm sure you would as well, that's one of the major factors playing into this, whether this bubble will burst or not. And if they keep on rising, obviously we're going to see, like you said, those people that would be renters are now homeowners are going to start seeing that pinch and they can't afford it and foreclose. And we get to that point.
Exactly.
Yeah, and one more question that I want to actually ponder you on. This is more on the cake example, but I'm just curious. I know that if we look at the number of homes that were constructed over COVID, we saw rapid expansion. Everyone was thinking that this is never going to end. All these cakes are always going to have this calorie amount, so they always just kept on building up, and now there's a lot of supply with a little bit less demand. So do you think that plays a little bit into a crash as well, or is that not as much of a concern?
Oh, well, I mean, like the supply and demand of the house also, of course, affects the price insofar as, because the interest rates were low and have been low for some time, you had a high demand for housing, not for dwelling, not for shelter. There's a difference, right? Rent was decreasing across Canada for a long time. Like even in 2019, in 2020, as homes were increasing, the rent was decreasing, right? So that it wasn't the demand for shelter that was increasing. That's different. It was the demand for actual physical housing and an actual home. That's what demand was that's the demand that was increasing. And so that shifts the demand on the graph to the right. You also had, of course, all of these lockdowns and massive lumber shortages and so on, or backlogs, which shifted the supply curve to the left, which facilitated this perfect storm, of course, for high housing prices, really high housing prices, right? The price went up and people continued to pay because the interest was so low. And now we're seeing the rent rates come back up, right? Now the indices are returning and are going higher and higher because more and more people realize that they can't afford a house and they're not going to be able to afford a house. And so the demand for rent is increasing.
Much, for sure.
Right. As it increases, as it shifts to the right, the price increases as well.
Absolutely. And I think that we've now done you've done a really great job of setting up, showing how there is this bubble and how it got created. But I guess a follow-up question on that then is, now that we already know that we're in this thing, do you think that there was a way that actually could have stopped this housing bubble? Like, was there something that, could have been done that this wouldn't have happened?
Oh, yeah. Don't let the government intervene in the interest rates. Let the market decide. Like, if you had a market decide, then you would have all of this information inputted into the market, which would then tell you what society's time preference was. And so you would aggregate the time preferences of those who had a high time preference and wanted to spend their money instantly. You take the time preference of those who had a long time preference and didn't mind waiting on the money, kind of thing. They could lend it out. They didn't need to spend it right now. And you would arrive at a market equilibrium, which would tell you what the demand for funds was, or what the demand for savings was, right? And you wouldn't have this massive bubble because the interest rates wouldn't have been artificially inflated. Like, what governments tried to do is reject or neglect reality for what it actually is, right? And push the time preference of people lower than what it actually was, or what it really should be, when all the information would be taken into account. And now those effects are coming back to haunt us. And, the same is true with inflation. Like, inflation plays a part in it too, right? You've printed and printed and printed and printed and printed some more money for how long now? And it's not just a little bit of cash. It's a lot of money. Well, of course, the value of the home hasn't decreased. The value of that which you pay for the home, however, has. And so what do you have to do to recover the value when you trade as the contractor or as an investor a home for cash? You have to raise the price.
Right.
So all of these interventions by government into the market have really conjured this perfect storm for a massive housing bubble that's actually very reminiscent of 2008. We're kind of in that, I don't know, who knows when the housing market's actually going to crash, but it sounds a lot like America before they had their massive slide into that deep recession or depression back in 2008. And you can also say that, a housing market doesn't crash like the stock market does. The stocks crash, and they crash hard. Like one day they're up top, the next day they're down at the tank. Like, it's just a hard thing. Whereas a house, the bubble can rupture, but it's more like a hiss. Like, how when you put a nail in a tire? That's maybe a better way of describing it, insofar as the air in that bubble or that tire just hisses out slowly over a period of who knows how long, until one day you head outside, you walk outside, and you realize that the tire's flat. And so it's like the housing market will slowly rupture, I would argue, over a period of who knows how long, until one day homeowners will step outside and realize that their house isn't worth a quarter of what it was when they bought it. That's what I would describe it. And like what has housing's decreased, the sales have decreased by what, 35% or something like that? Or
35% in BC, and they're saying that they're looking at record lows across the country now coming in. The data's not there yet, but I guess with that said, a question then moving forward, and I guess obviously for those that haven't listened before, haven't seen us before, the Alberta Prosperity Project is about providing solutions going forward for a new Alberta, right? And so I guess my question would be, how is the APP proposing you deal with housing bubbles? I mean, obviously you mentioned a little bit about government intervention before, but is there anything else that the APP would kind of put forward and say, here's what needs to happen to prevent this from happening in the future?
Oh, yeah. Don't let government intervene in the market. Don't let them set the interest rates, because they'll set interest rates according to what they believe will get them reelected. That's just the rule. Right. They're self-interested individuals, just like everyone else is self-interested. And if they believe that Canadians or Albertans buying a home, even when they don't have the necessary capital to buy a home, will get them reelected, then they're going to do so. But of course, that's just going to lead to all of this suffering coming down the line here as the reality snaps back and wallops us in the face. And so the answer is, you have to constitutionally enshrine, or you have to be absolutely certain that a few powerful individuals in government can't manipulate interest rates as they see fit, because they'll do it for their own aims, not for yours or mine, and certainly not for the markets. You can't, because it's like, there are as I mentioned, there are so many factors that go into setting that interest rate in a free market that it's impossible to take every single one of those factors into account as a finite individual with a finite mind, and then conjure up some interest rate that corresponds with what the market would, with all of the information that it has. And so that's the answer, is keep the government out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that definitely, I think, provides hopefully some answers on, what kind of this, I'll call it a mess that we're in right now, and hopefully the way that we're going to be getting out of this in the near future. So with that said, if you want to help support this mission of the Alberta Prosperity Project and moving forward, I encourage you to go to our website and get yourself a membership. That is what helps get us the numbers necessary to put forward to politicians, as you know, we're not a political party, and show them that this movement is a lot larger than they realize at the moment. So feel free to check us out. That's www.albertaprosperityproject.com/join the project. As well, you can see all of our constitutional proposals and documents as well, and lots of frequently asked questions. Be sure to reach out to us there as well. Furthermore, we've also got, of course, as you know, social media. We've got Facebook, Twitter, Rumble, Instagram, all the above. We're at Alberta Prosperity Project. You can check us out there. As well, if you're wondering how to get involved, I encourage you to volunteer with us. We always have opportunities for people, whether it's working on the social media or it's working at events, doing all these things that we love to do. Speaking of which, upcoming events, we will be in Bonnyville on Friday and then on Piers on Saturday. Come see us there if you're in the area. We'd love to meet you, love to say hello. It's going to be a great couple of events. With that said, it was great talking to you again, Tanner, and we will see everybody next week for the next podcast. Have a good one.
You bet. See you later.